holy fuck, undead unluck is actually peak. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think actually I'm very surprised at undead unluck. Now, I did say before in the last video that I really liked for what it was, as well as when I had read it all those years ago, but it actually shattered my expectations of what undead unluck can actually reach and what it could really honestly be. With the series really feeling like there's a lot of interesting concepts that get like spitfire to you over and over and over and over again, but there's a whole bunch of fun. There's like a whole lot of setup, but there's also fun inside that setup that's happening, making it feel like we don't have to dwell on things and we can just move forward at the same time.
Oh yeah, minor spoilers by the way.
You know what? I should probably get into the story. Alright, let's do this one last time. The story first started off with Fuko, right? Fuko is a girl that has unluck power, so if you touch her, then you get super unluck, right? And if she really likes you, you get ultra unluck, you could potentially die, or you could get injured, or the case may be. Feeling a little bit like Rogue from the X-Men, but it varies in degree, right? And she's about to basically end it all because she had hurt her parents when she was younger. On top of that, she can't necessarily have a good normal life. She can't go to school, she can't do anything, so the only thing she does is read romance novels.
What the fuck?
And before she jumps into oncoming traffic with a train, this man by the name of Andy, who is fully naked, talks to her and says, this is a little cliche, but, and gets immediately interrupted by Fuko saying that she has a completely deadly disease and you should stay away from her. Do not even try to attempt to stop her. He then proceeds to go inside of the knife that she's holding towards him, gets hit by a knife, and says, a deadly disease that could potentially kill me. Grabs her by the face, puts her on the other side to save her, and is waiting for his unluck to happen. And I think that's a beautiful stopping off part when it comes to the story. But really getting to why I think this series is so great, I think it's really great for like the one thing of like the setups, right? Now, it sets up so many things necessarily that I didn't think would be important or like really anything to the story at all. But it's actually extremely important to the narrative and the characters that are involved with this. Like, one of the things I will say, but I won't go into heavy detail with, is reading manga. And that's a topic that gets extremely meta, but also meshes extremely well with the story at the same time. Another reason I have to give Undead Unluck its flowers is just the narratives, right? The narratives that they have to tell you, or the things that they're basically implying throughout the whole story. And one of the major big ones is the negators. These are people that have powers in this world, and I can't help but make a little bit of a similarity, just a small similarity to the people in JJK, right? The Juju sorcerers. And how basically both these groups of people just have horrific lives when it comes to being this pillar in the world that's supposed to basically make a change, especially if you do go along with this system that's already put into place. But going back to the negators, most of the negators, if not all of them, have had tragic backstories to what has happened to them in the past, all the way to the person that they are right now, having me even sympathize with some of the antagonists that we do see here and there. The next narrative I want to bring up is the narrative with the powers, right? The powers that all of these people have necessarily. And the narrative basically is to be more creative than logical, because if you're just going with cold hard logic, you're not being creative and thinking outside the box, you're not gonna be able to move forward and actually change and morph the power that you have. And the biggest example of this is with Andy, right? Now, the example I really want to get into is a specific scene more or less by the end of the season where we have Andy and you sort of go back into his past and you sort of see all the things that was happening to Andy way back when, like 200 plus years ago. But this time it's going to be completely different, because this time Fuko is going to be with him. Now, the only reason why Fuko's with him is because we're just going back into his memories and we're seeing things, but she was able to actually go into his memories to be with him at this point in time. And as you can guess, a man that's overlived over 200 years does not have one of the best of lives. He's seen a lot of loss, a lot of negativity, and not enough positivity. So when Fuko's with him in these memories, it sort of helps him to give him hope, more happiness in his life, and sort of gives him a chance to be more creative because of that. Instead of not being in the best of moods, in a more down state, you can't really be as creative or be the best you if you're always in a shitty ass position when it comes to your mental state. But while I'm already on the tone of the characters, I might as well get into all the ones I really love. Like, obviously the main characters, Fuko and Andy, the dual protagonists, fucking peak. I love both of them a lot. Start with Andy, I really just love how his power set really is and how really creative he is with it, right? That's one. Two, I really love with Andy is just like how kind of a person he really is necessarily. Now, he may act like the little brash or the selfish type, especially when it comes to him dying or wanting to die. It feels like it's all a play or a front, as well as, then again, he's been alive for 200 fucking years. He's been alive for a really, really long time. And he doesn't necessarily want to keep going through pain and traumas and all this other nonsense that he has to go through pretty much every year through year. But then there comes his foil, the hopeful one, the one that's like the best of humanity in a sense, right? And that's Fuko. Fuko not only does this with Andy when she's very nice and kind to him, as well as she looks out and tries to connect with him, but also with all the other negators. Like for example with Tatiana, she sort of connects with her and tries to even bring out the best in her with no ulterior motive, not to try to hurt her, not to try to sell her off, just to be necessarily her friend and necessarily give her another pillar in her life that she might need. And it doesn't even necessarily stop with the allies, it also goes with the enemies as well, where she's like, come on, join our side and we can help you in any shape or way, form or possible, even though 9 out of 10 ain't taking that shit. Then there's the other character I really feel for, and it's Tatiana, right? Tatiana I felt extremely bad for. Like Fuko, she was a negator, right? But her powers activated and accidentally killed her parents as well, just like Fuko, and she was basically left alone. And on top of that, there's also an organization that necessarily goes and tries to find negators per se and try to sell them off to the rich. So she's basically being auctioned off like in a slave trade type of situation, and she basically wants to die. She doesn't necessarily want to live. She killed her parents, as well as she doesn't feel like anyone can touch her, so she doesn't want to be alive anymore. But to come to the rescue is Billy. Billy comes in and saves her, and instead of actually pulling the trigger in as well as in her life, he basically gives her life by giving her happiness, as well as give her sweets to make her happy and just show her like the brighter side of things. And Billy necessarily becomes a pillar for Tatiana, but the issue then becomes Billy betrays the whole union, the group that they're all in together, and it sort of puts Tatiana in a rough spot because she necessarily Billy, and he's basically the whole reason why she started to continue to live again, but she doesn't end up joining him. And it's sort of like a extremely tragic but also beautiful way of seeing it, right? Because the one person that necessarily gave you hope, the one person that necessarily saved your life in that moment and became one of your main pillars or the biggest pillar in your life, has betrayed you. But now in this moment in your life that you have more people that surround you, have more people that necessarily love you and want to take care of you and be your other pillars in your life, so you're not alone anymore. And that becoming her self-realization, it's Fuko. It's Fuko that's always been there, that's been her friend. She never really wanted to use her. She wanted to only be her friend instead of Billy, who wanted to use her for her actual abilities and powers. Also, another thing I do like is how most characters have something to do. Is only a very few that lady are just sitting there doing nothing, i.e. these two right here. But at least one is useful and the other one's just a nothing sandwich, to be honest. Then there's also the world building that is in Undead Unluck. I really do love the world building in it. I feel like we get introduced to a lot of concepts here and there, but we don't dwell on it for too long, and I'm hoping that we do dwell on some of those topics on a later date, like the artifacts that we do have out there in the world, or other negators, or even the consequences. Like one of the best consequences that I saw that felt like a double-edged sword, which is the one where they had Apocalypse, who basically gives them rewards if they complete missions, right? And one of the completions for the mission was that you unify all the languages in the world, but it doesn't affect negators. So the issue with this becoming is that everyone is basically speaking English, but if you're a negator, you're still speaking your foreign language. Let's say Japanese, you're speaking Japanese. And the issue becomes that not only can no one understand what the hell you're saying to them, but you become a literal beacon for the whole mafia that wants to basically take you and sell you into like a slavery type of thing for rich people, because you're speaking something that no one understands, and it basically becomes a huge red flag for you being captured. One of the things that I did have to say as well is this show definitely feels like a secret romance anime underneath everything. It feels like there are times where Fuko and Andy woo each other in certain different ways, and they sort of blush or they sort of have a quick smile, or the case may be, and sometimes it's really easy to forget like they're sort of basically gonna fall in love by the end of things, but they really easily distract you with so many things that they put in front of you like a fucking baby. There's the last thing I will say is like the animation was a little wonky at times. They have a few moments where like it was a bit per se bad, right? But necessarily I didn't really care, because it was very minute or very minor when it came to it happening here and there. Oh yeah, one more thing, Future Jugo coming in real quick, just to say the last bad thing I will say is the fucking recaps were terrible. Oh my god, I don't know why, but they were like 3-4 minutes or some shit, or we would just like come back to a flashback and that should be like a whole minute, and I would just have to fucking skip through it. Like what the actual fuck? And to be honest, the only thing that could probably fix that solution with all these problems is like just make it seasonal, just have it be 12 episodes and then call it a day. But other than that, I had a really good time watching Undead Unluck. I definitely highly suggest to anyone out there that's watching this video, and thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.